YouTube, it's Brian Phillips coming back again today with a tiller video, as you can see right here. This tiller is beautiful. We really like it. You may have seen the videos that we just put out the other day. Would have been released on Easter Day, and we really like it. This is Easter Day afternoon. As you can see, it's, well, I don't know if you can see, but it's raining. Take my word for it. It's really nasty. It might even snow later today. So I am doing an indoor project to try to modify this thing to make it work better for my application. And we're going to show you exactly what that's going to entail right now. So as you already know, this tiller works nice. If you watch the video, we reversed the rotation of the tines, so they go like this. They go reverse. They cut into the ground, and that pulls the tiller down into the ground, especially with the smaller tractor. We're running on a 1025R, and this has 25 horsepower rating. It's actually like 24.1 and 18 PTO horsepower. So the problem with this tiller application, and when you've got the top link out at all, or even when it's all the way down with the stock top link, the thing wants to shoot stuff still a little bit up into this area. And you can see I've kind of cleaned it out, but there's still quite a bit of debris in there. And like right next to the oil dipstick, I believe that's not probably a good idea to get a bunch of debris in there. And then I've had a few rocks that got trapped in here, and you can see it's bent this just a little bit, mostly from actuating the 3-point up and down. And so I want to avoid that. So my idea is very simple, and it's much like what the options you can buy. This happens to be a Tarter brand, and it's a very good machine. I've been very happy with it. It's built like a tank. And what I'm going to do is, as this thing pivots forward, like I said, you have a big improvement on debris getting thrown in there. If you're using a bigger tractor with a higher ground clearance, I don't think you would see this problem as much. But on the small unit, you are going to see it. So two problems, actually. This is the other thing. We broke off of there with our little chains. I don't really care that much. Not that big a deal. But beyond that, I've got some rubber that I was using for my cutting edges on my tractors. And I have a snow push for this thing. And then I have a 0-turn blade. But I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but we put on a poly blade. This is a ultra high molecular weight blade. And so I'm going to use that as soon as we get the first snow. And like I suggested, it's very, very crappy out, but not quite snowing yet. So that being said, we're going to try to put this on because I don't know if I'm going to need it. Problem is, I don't want to give up this big piece because it's kind of expensive stuff. And I don't really have any problems with a little bit of debris coming out the side. So I had this smaller piece, which is going to cover the vast majority of the width here. So that's what we're going to do, is we're just going to come in here and show you kind of how this is constructed. This is just flat steel, and then there's a round piece here. Goes all the way across, one long piece, and it's welded on both ends. So obviously you don't want to have to drill through that. And so I have to measure up to about here, and I have to put in my holes. I'm going to put in 6 holes. I've got a couple of different sizes. I think I'm going to go with the 9/16, which I believe is actually a 1/2-inch bolt. But either way, I think that's going to be sufficient with the washers. And I'm going to start with 6, and then I have enough to do 8. And if that's not big enough, then I'll go up to these monsters here. I don't even know what size those are. I think that's like 7/8 drive or something like that. I'm not sure. No, that's probably 3/4. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to use those at the beginning. Mostly because I don't want to give up material here. So obviously this thing is going to get in the way. So I'm going to have to make slits in 2 spots. And so I'm going to use some masking tape for that. And then I got some drill bits out. I've got the drill bit that's picked out that's going to make a big enough hole to receive these here. And I believe what I'll do is I'll mark 2 spots here, 2 spots here, and then 2 more spots here. And then if I ever go to the longer piece, I'll just add 1 additional hole on either end. And that's going to hold that piece like this. Now, the worst case scenario would be if this thing were to run. Remember, it's picking up and going backward and pulling back like this, which you have to set that when you get it. It comes going the other way. It comes going forward. If it were to catch the rubber skirt and pull it in, I feel like the longer it is, the more risk we have of that happening. So as you can see here, we're a little bit shorter, and I'll just measure that. I got the measuring tape here. So it looks like we're about 7.5 inches or 7 5/8 of depth, but we're gonna lose about 2 inches of overlap. So you're gonna end up with about 5 inches. So that's not quite gonna drag the ground, but it's gonna leave only just a small sliver for the rocks and different things to shoot out, which is fine. I don't necessarily want it dragging the ground, because when it drags the ground, it's gonna be more likely to get sucked in. And that would not be good. I don't want that to happen. I don't doubt this thing could chew through it, but it's gonna ruin it in one bite. So, or the tiller is gonna be damaged. I don't know which one, but I would assume that probably we'll just lose the rubber. Or it'll stop it up or something like that. It'll cause the clutch to slip. Not sure. I don't want to find out. This is my backup plan. For now, we're going to work with this. So when we come back, I'll go ahead and have this thing taped up, and we'll show you our next step. So in the meantime, I should probably show you this too. This is basically the way that the rubber held up on the plow, on my little zero-turn plow with the Z655. Love that machine for clearing the snow. Super fun, really fast. You can see it's kind of worn down the edge, which is just the direction that I had this mounted. So it's just rubbing that angle into it. The only place I really had significant wear and tear was on the ends, and that's because I did 2 screw holes instead of 1. I wanted this to be reversible. But just to show you the strength of this stuff, this is 1/2 inch thick rubber. It's very resilient. It's a little bit supple. You could even have a much stiffer piece like a tire or something that you've cut the sidewalls out. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's a tiller, for goodness sakes. But I just wanted to show you what that looked like. And I might actually take that and just cut a couple of strips for the end and figure out some creative way to put that stuff on there for now. But for now, I just wanted to show you that. I forgot to mention that on the beginning. So we're going to start with this, getting it marked up. And one more thing, guys. This is the product that I took out of the backside of that tractor, and I did it just with a dustpan and a little broom thing. And you can see there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, look at these rocks. I mean, that in and of itself is not such a big deal, but if that thing flies into the wrong spot, you could actually damage the tractor. So that's about half full in this kid's play bucket. That's what I had lying around for cleaning up. But so this project will be pretty important in my application. If you're running a small tractor like this, you might want to do it as well. So we'll come back with the marking. Okay, so I measured this at 48 inches long, which makes sense. It's actually just a hair off because that took a 48-inch cutting blade. And I had cut this with the intentions of making 4 cutting blades. Well, I only cut off the one and then just used it for the one season. So I've got this left over. And I took the 48 minus 26, the outside dimension here. And I noticed that my tape, which I was using for marking, just regular masking tape, was about the right width, which was super easy. So I took about 48 minus 26 gives you 22 divided by 2 is 11. So you go 11 in, and then there's your starting cut and your ending cut. So we got to cut out that little bit of material on both sides. And we just got to figure out how deep to cut so that this thing will slide up in there. Now, obviously we could cut a lot, or we could cut just a straight cut at 11 inches. And then we could cut a straight cut at 11 inches, just have a small gap, but I don't really want rocks to be able to shoot through there because it's still it's probably a safe spot. We'd probably be into the tire tread. But I just, like, this is the worst spot right there. I don't want to get it in there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and err on the safe side, and we'll measure down. I know that this tube is about, this tube here ends up being about 1.5 inches diameter. So if I want to go about 2 inches, 2.5 inches in, that'd be way up there. You see that? So I would say there's 1.5 inches worth of penetration. Remember, that's going to sit up on top of this face. I've got this blocked up pretty high, so it's easy to work on and see. So normally it would sit down at a much less severe angle. So I think I'm going to go for, I'll probably clear 2 inches, and that'll give us a little bit of room for wiggle room there. So we'll just mark that next. and come right back and then cut it out with a regular utility knife. This stuff, believe it or not, the easiest thing to cut it with is a utility knife, but it's got to be fairly sharp, and it will cut just fine. And then you can drill holes just fine too. So we'll go ahead and get that done next and then show you the results. Okay, so I'm here alone today. My camera crew is taking a much deserved nap. So I'm doing this without her help. Normally she would hold the camera for me. So it's really hard to show these steps. So I'm probably not going to be able to, but we're just going to cut down to here, and I'm just going to overcut a little bit. I'll just cut just outside the line because it doesn't matter if it's a little bit overcut. You just don't want to lose a ton of rubber because it's what's doing the job. And then ideally what I would like to do is try to make a nice cut so it's just one seamless cut. I don't want to have these corners. And plus the corners are exceptionally difficult to cut out as well. So my plan is to probably just overcut a little bit and then make a nice swoopy cut, and then come back around and do the same thing on both sides. So we'll show you how that turns out. I would hold the camera, but I don't think that's going to work well. We're going to try this, guys. I want you to see how relatively easy this stuff is to cut. Remember my idea for the round cut? I've literally already abandoned it because it's so easy to cut in a straight line. I bet you guys can probably hear my wonderful weather out there. Hard to see in the camera, it's hard to see in real life. Don't want to cut through and hit your hands, obviously. But I'm just going to try to get that through so the blade comes all the way through. It obviously likes to stick because it's rubber, so it's sticky. What might work nicely is if you were to put a little bit of Windex on there. So that's the gist of it. Okay, so we got that first one cut. So you can see it just kind of rips out a little bit. Stuff is sturdy, I'll tell you, but it certainly cuts decent. I was surprised the first time I cut it for a blade because it really does a good job of cutting. I would dry fit this, except I'm not sure that it's really necessary. I guess I want to clean up that one little edge there. And this is going to be a one-hand thing. There we go. So got that out of there. So we will see if we can get ourselves untangled from the machine and give you guys a shot of this. Oop. So there you have it. So that's a pretty nice little dry fit. I'm satisfied with that. You can see we're going to clearly have enough clearance to get the bolts and washers in there, and I'll probably have it so that it's most of the way down, and then we can, you know, maybe adjust it up a little if we want to. And then this one I got to cut, so we'll do that off camera again and come right back to you. All right, folks, so there we have our both of our relief cuts made. It's a nice fit. Of course, you can go up higher or lower depending on what you think you want. I think it's probably going to be something like this, down just a little bit. Of course, we don't have to come in and screw with that anymore, which is nice. So now it's just a hole, 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 hole. So 6 holes, and then if necessary, we'll throw in a couple extra here. So I'll show you once I get the first one done, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I've marked where the edges are going to be. I just took one of my washers and this king size Sharpie and just marked in there, and I just reached under with my finger to make sure there's no welds or seams that I didn't notice or see. And obviously I'm going to have clearance. And worst case scenario, if you think you have a clearance issue under there, which I don't believe you will, with your hardware, you can always put the head of the bolt on the inside here, and then have the nut and lock washer out on the outside, which is fine. It doesn't really make a big difference on this application. So I'm using a flat washer, then I'm using a lock washer, and I'm using a regular nut. I'd rather use a nylock, but whatever, it's fine. If they come off, they'll just get tilted into the ground somewhere. Then obviously I want to make sure I have enough length to be able to go through this rubber and the steel and have all this stuff. And I believe it's going to be just about right. But we'll find out here shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and start poking my holes. Obviously, this is going to be potentially in the way when we get the drill and we're trying to hold it. It's going to be a little bit challenging because of this conflict there. So I'm hoping I can just go at an angle like this and get that. And then same thing here, if I can get an angle there so I can get that to go. Worst case scenario, I'll just have to take this nut off and pull that link out. But obviously the end pieces will be super easy. And then once all the holes are drilled, then I can transfer those holes, of course, to the piece here. So that'll be super easy. We'll just peel off a little bit of this masking tape and kind of mark where the holes are, and then just carry them over. It's super easy to drill holes in this rubber. I thought it was gonna be a huge pain when I went to do it for my plows. The other one's outside, so I can't show you. But it's just turned out to be super easy. You do have to go through and cut the hole and then ream it out a couple of times because the bit likes to, it doesn't have anything to hold on to, so it'll rip the hole about half the size. So whatever size you need, you can either go up a few sizes. I usually just drill several times through, and then if there's a little bit of resistance on the hardware, that's not gonna hurt anything. So we'll be right back. And all right guys, so we're back. We got all the holes drilled. As you can see, I had to take out the pins like I thought I would. I ended up using a step bit for the last step, just so I could kind of deburr the holes. And of course, I cleaned them up. I use these. This is a 3/8 inch drill bit, so these are, I'm assuming these are 1/2 inch. Or, I thought these were 1/2 inch, but I guess not. But I just made sure they all fit. And so now at this point, if you don't like the way those marks look, with the marker, you can just mark on there and just wipe them right back off, and that'll be gone. I had thought about the possibility of hitting them with some spray paint, except I don't think I have any this color right now. So I will have to get some, or spray it carefully so I don't get overspray anywhere that's not going to be covered by the rubber. But that's that. Now I just need to get the piece, hold it up there, and mark my holes so I can drill the holes to receive the bolts. And then this thing will be hung up on there. So we'll show you that next. Okay, so as you can see, I've drawn a hash mark on both axes, and that way I can transfer it. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see enough to see what you need to see. So there's your mark. And I told the stuff worked pretty good. I just use this to hold it up so I can drill in and not totally go into the concrete. And then basically I can just eyeball this height. But probably what I'll do first is I'll just get the outside perimeter holes done first. Or I might even just do this one hole. I'm not sure. These ones are a little bit harder because I can't transfer the depth, and there's no telling if it's exactly the same. I would assume it's close enough that we could just eyeball it so that it's close. So in order to do that, I'm going to, you could also drill from the bottom, which would be rather awkward because these don't get out of the way super good. I mean, they do move, but with a drill, even a compact drill like this, it's kind of hard to get the body of the drill in there and still shoot the bit out unless you had a really, really short bit. So in this case, I might just make a jig that'll tell me how far down to go. You know, just use something that's lying around close by and just kind of use that as a jig, a reference point. And then I'll transfer those. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. Actually, I don't want to dink around with it because the rubber will give a little teeny bit. So we'll show you how that turns out. Guys, so I wanted to show you how easy it was to drill through this rubber. I'm on this hole, so you can see. I've just used my estimation skills to bring those holes in just far enough. I'm sure it'll be fine. If it's not, we'll just open the hole up. But I've got this hole started so I can do it with my left hand, and I have a nut sitting underneath it to hold it up. And then I had that over there on the other side, the big crescent wrench. high speed. Hardly any pressure, just let it cut. Don't force the bit because then it'll make the hole floppy, and there you have it. And then run it after you're through. Nice clean cut. And as you can see, it's got a nice kind of a snug fit to it, but it definitely goes in and out without too much trouble. And of course I'm right-handed, so I'm holding the camera with my right hand. You can see that works nicely. There's no slop on it, but there is actually a little bit of slop on these holes. See, just a little bit. So hopefully we don't need to take advantage, but if we do, it's there. So we'll continue that process, and then the next the next shot you're gonna get, we'll have the washers and bolts slid through each of these holes, and we'll have this thing up there. All right, folks, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but not 6. And the reason I didn't do 6 is because I was suspect of where that hole ended up being. My marking was not doing its justice. So as you can see, I'm just a little bit off on my mark. So I decided I would go ahead and hook it on there, get everything torqued down, and just use the impact to tighten those down. I hope this little bit of play here is not a big issue. I don't think it will be, because obviously this thing's gonna get beat every time a rock flies at it, but it's gonna go like this. So I think we're gonna be okay. But if I'm not, it's a lot of work to take all this stuff off. So I'd really rather not. I'd probably end up doing a hole here and a hole here. So I can actually have everything else back together and still add some extra holes inside here if necessary, maybe just one. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and fix this mark, and then I'm gonna get that drilled, and that'll be my last hole. Sometimes when you're drilling or when you're marking and you're kind of trying to hold things and think about camera angles and all these different things. See, there you go. You can see I wasn't quite lined up. My point of view was not lined up. So that's a better mark right there. So I will do that now, and we'll come right back and show you the final results, have everything cleaned up. And I think what I'll do is I'll hang on to these clips. We'll actually show you running this unit after this blizzard storm or whatever it is over. Should be using it this week, so hopefully it won't be too long. All right, guys. So basically, we've got the skirt installed here. It stops a couple inches short on each side. Folds out, but it doesn't fold out. It always returns back to where it came from. I did end up adding this extra bolt on both sides. So those things are torqued down with a lock washer and a regular nut on the inside. And it sure looks nice. I'm really happy with it. Looks almost like it was a factory option. Of course, it wasn't in this case. If you go to get a reverse tine tiller, you're going to pay a pretty big premium for it. This one here normally goes for around 1,700 bucks. And then I don't know if I got maybe 10 bucks in that rubber piece, if that. I think I spent 40 bucks on this whole huge roll up here. And it was about double as long when I got it. I think it was 16 feet long. I got that for a steal when I got it, so you might have to spend a little extra. But the only thing I would do different if I had to do it again is if I had unlimited resources, I would do the rubber all the way to the edge. But like I said, I'm pretty much ready to just replace the rubber, put one more hole, and I can replicate that setup. Very easy. Now, the next step is going to be, I will, off camera, go ahead and I'll get the 3-point backed up on the tractor, get the PTO shaft hooked up, and I'll show you guys that everything fits still, and then I'll give you a shot of it running, and then after that's all done, you guys will be able to see it actually working. All right, folks, this is the last clip before it's running, and we have the 3-point all attached. The PTO shaft is on. I've already run it for just a second, but it's so loud in here, I didn't want to do that. Obviously, again, we're on the 1025R, small tractor, got plenty of ground clearance. And now when we lower everything down to the ground, we're going to have this skirt to help knock down some of those rocks before they shoot right up into this area, right up into that area where the PTO shaft attaches, and all these vulnerable spots here that, well, I mean, they're not extremely vulnerable, but they are vulnerable. So we'll go ahead and I'll just grab the lever and let this down. So that's all the way down. Of course, there's a little bit of, I always put that back up so that when I start the engine, it lifts up off the ground. So you can see there's a little bit of clearance. Ideally, you'd have no clearance, but then this leaves little to no risk that this will ever get folded up under and into those tines. So we'll see. And like I said, if it's not quite enough, if we're still shooting a lot of debris up into these vulnerable areas, then I can just go ahead and put a bigger piece on or extend that piece. I think this is going to work really nice. And like I said, I don't really care if it comes out here with unlimited supplies. Of course, you just go all the way to the edge pretty easy. But you see, then that protects the entire wheelbase of the tractor, because you're not going to shoot stuff this direction now. It's going to miss the tires, which is kind of nice, somewhat. Can't wait to show you in action, because I can't wait to see it myself in action. And by the way, that's with the top link all the way turned in, which does make for a little bit awkward installation of the 3-point. You have to basically get the lower arms attached. Then you have to take and drive forward a little bit, which kind of pulls everything. And then you can drop your top link down and attach it. Otherwise, you have to let this way out and then pull it way back with the top link. So, really excited to get out and try it again. Turned out really nice. I'm happy with it. I think it's going to do enough to satisfy my requirements, and we'll all be able to make that decision together. So without further ado, next up, running in the field. All right, YouTube, we're finally back. We did this project here with this flap to help stop some of the reverse tilling action shooting into the tractor. So we're going to show you a quick clip of how clean it is now. As you know, I worked on that little application on Easter and cleaned out in here, give them a nice good view of what's going on in there, because when we're done, we're gonna film how much of this stuff got shot up in there, because the whole idea is to show you how this works. So there was just stuff everywhere in here.
Clear up into the cup.
Notice that the top link is totally adjusted in, and I mean, you could get a shorter top link too, but in my case, I didn't really want to deal with that. And you can see our wonderful front yard backdrop. That's the way we like to decorate our yard. So that's for another story for another day. But what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and get our seed down using our little residential spreader. We were using cups the last time, and that got old fairly quick. But we're going to see how this does. We're going to put the seed down. We've already done our rough tilling. We've spent about 3 days picking up rocks because it's been wet.
Yes.
And every time we think it's dry, it snows or rains or whatever's, and then it's wet. So hopefully today we've had, what, 2 days of dry, and then 1 day of just like a little bit of snow, which is crazy because it is April and we've had 3 inches of snow.
Mid-April, yeah.
So we are getting ready to do this, and we're going to show you this when it's running. We'll go ahead and get this stuff spread over the section that we're ready to spread it on. And why don't we give you guys a short clip of that, and then we'll jump back onto the tiller. Okay guys, so what we've been doing is we've been working this grading here Basically the road for the construction on our new house, which I know you guys have seen. If you haven't seen it, we have a video series that shows the construction from start to finish on this property. In fact, we show the property before we bought it, which is pretty cool. We even built a bridge before we bought it because the owners were weird and they let us do this. But anyway, this is the driveway remnants, okay?
Yep.
So we asked the builder to take out the gravel when we had him shift the driveway in a little bit for a different angle and for a better straight shot for the runway, okay? So show them this straight line here, camera crew. Basically our goal in this project is to make this flat line smooth. And also when we moved everything, we ended up with an extra driveway over here in the yard, which served two purposes. One, it made me annoyed, and two, we had to pick up all the rocks because the builder didn't scrape it clean enough. I mean, he left probably 8 inches of rock in there. So we've been using this tiller to break that stuff up. And that's why we wanted the reverse till action, because we knew we had to get through that stuff. Which, when you look out here, this is our done section, and this is our undone section. Now, we probably still have a little bit of touch up with the rake, but this has already been roughed in. Now we're gonna go ahead and spread the seed. But you can see here, there's still a pretty good handful of rocks. And when I say a handful, I mean like
Thousands.
a truck full. And this is just, you know, recycled concrete, which is wonderful for your yard. The good news about recycled concrete in our dirt is that when the water gets to rushing hard, it hopefully will give us some load-bearing surface. So if we need to drive across it, it won't sink as bad because those wet areas can drain a little bit faster. So that being understood, we're still trying to take off the surface, and the seed is going to go on top, starting about, where's the crack? Is this the crack we got to go to?
No, this one.
We're probably going to start somewhere in the middle, work our way back and forth. We'll just go to this section where the dark dirt is, and then we'll go ahead and till it in, and then we're going to concentrate specifically on making sure this edge is nice and smooth, and then we should be golden. But that's kind of the project. And then over there on the approach, we've been building up dirt, and we've been taking this nasty mix as we get it out, and we've been using it over there because we had a skirt of concrete poured, and that was to help keep the steep hill from washing out. So, but of course it's ugly. So without further ado, we'll show you if this works real quick. This isn't really rocket science, but we'll show you anyway. Yeah, that's probably a little bit slow. I think we're gonna have to speed it up some. See it spread? I bet you can't even see it on camera. I would say the seed rate needs to go way up to match what we were doing before.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm just going to go back over and start again. There you
That's
go.
more like it.
Better.
It's not blowing away too much, so that's a lot better.
Yeah, and the thing is with these rocks and stuff, it's just hard to get a really good spread on it because it bounces around so much. But this is a lot easier than using the cup method.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get a ton of it on the driveway.
You're maybe going a touch wide.
I'm going to just hit this spot a little bit more.
Okay.
The reason that's all torn up is because that was a trench for our power. Excuse me, that's a trench for our water.
And the power.
For our power.
Yep, so you had to redo both of those too.
Were you saying I was going too wide?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like I was not overlapping enough?
Only on one pass. That one's better. It might just be hard for me to see too.
So these little tiny rocks are the ones that I don't want to leave in our yard.
Oh, you're out. Are you out of seed? Oh no, you just weren't doing it.
I'm stopping. So these are the things that we get the wonderful pleasure of picking up thousands of.
Mm-hmm.
When it's wet, it's a real pain. Well, we're just going to basically till this up, smooth it out. It's already been roughed, and then smoothed out so we have the right drainage. But now we have to make it good. Nests up.
Yeah. Okay. He's gonna do one more pass, but that's working. That's working a ton better. I couldn't have ever would have stood that close to him before. You can see all the rocks that he's kicking up, so then we'll have to go back through. Every time he tills, there's more rocks, so it's just kind of like an ongoing process until we get to a point where we're okay with it. The part where he is right now was probably the worst for leftover rock, so it's just a constant process. You can hear when he gets like right there. That's where all the big rocks are. But we had already tilled this once. It's probably been over a week ago by now because we've had so much rain and snow. So this has already been tilled, so that's why we're putting the seed on top of it and then just tilling the seed in. But that guard makes a huge difference. That's way better. I know he filmed how he did that because I wasn't helping him that day. But I believe it's a 1/2 inch thick piece of rubber that he bolted on there. That's the width, basically the width of the wheelbase. But the reverse tilling is way better if you have really rocky soil, which we knew right here was going to be the worst part of the whole yard that we had to do. So he's got a couple more passes here. We're almost to our bucket where we stopped. If you haven't seen this before, this is a Tarter 60-inch rotary tiller, or a 5-foot, and it comes forward, like in a forward running position, and it is reversible. If you're gonna buy one of these new and you know you want to reverse it as you're setting it up. We did that first before we did really any of the assembly, because we were able to reverse it before we had the arms and stuff on it, because you have to take the gearbox off the top. So we basically did the reversing process and then we assembled the thing. We did have to shorten the PTO shaft on ours also. We have a John Deere 1025R. So it's a lot smaller tractor than you can run this thing with. So we knew shortening the PTO was probably on the list of things to do. Look at all that driveway sweeping I get to do this afternoon. I'm so excited about that. We want that edge to be really nice though, so it's nice to have a pile of dirt kind of to work from. Okay. This is his last pass, he said. Because our little spreader there is kind of about where we stopped. We're just gonna do sections at a time. That way we don't have a whole bunch done and then end up with weather that we can't control. Plus it's gonna take us some time to get this smoothed out and de-rocked and all that. So we're just gonna kind of work section by section. And we won't show you guys that whole thing, but oof.
So that was relatively smooth, other than the fact that there's 10,000 new rocks to pick up.
Yep, sweet.
Let's see how this thing worked. It seemed like it was working awesome.
It looked a lot better.
I mean, there's like gotta be nothing that's up there.
No.
Look at this. Look at this. I don't even see one rock.
Nope.
Nope, I see one rock.
Nope, yep.
One rock, chunk of wood. I mean, that's like nothing, guys.
Yeah, compared to what it was. Holy cow.
I mean, it took me like an hour to clean it out the last time.
Yeah.
The only thing I regret, and I don't even really regret it, is that if I had gone all the way to the edges, I would have had an even better result. Which is kind of like obviously, Brian, that would have been a better result. But the thing is, as you can see here on our lip of the driveway, obviously that tilled in all the seed, and now I just have to go fix my screw ups where I pulled the tiller up at the wrong time. But we dragged all the product up here, so now we can work the edge. Of course, we can go through and pick up the thousands of rocks, which is fun. That's why you have 4 kids. And then when we're done with that, I can run over it possibly with the tire, I don't know, and then maybe go over it once more with the rake. The only good thing about having a lot of rocks on the edge is we get a lot of deliveries here, and when they deliver, I don't know how hard it is to stay on this path. It's almost as wide as a lane. The narrowest point is like about 10.6. There should really not be a problem pulling a van body truck up and down this driveway. But they like to go off the edge, and then that gravel will help to support the load. That is a little bit annoying when you're tilling and you pull up grass when you're trying to plant grass. Like this thing could probably just stick back in the dirt.
He'll stick in the ground somewhere. Yep.
So, but that's it. And the biggest problem I have is, just like I said, pulling it out at the right time, so that we don't have these grooves here.
Yeah.
And it looks like we can hit that with just a rake and we'll be golden. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. That little modification was super easy. We really like this tiller. It's been great. I can't believe the amount of work you can do in a short time with it.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a garden, it'd be so much easier because you're not contouring the ground. And obviously with the 3-point, you've got, you know, hydraulic pressure isn't down, it's just lifting. So when you let it down, it just floats, okay? And so as a result, when you go up onto a bump or whatever, i.e. the driveway, it's a little bit challenging because you have to be right on the control, and then it takes time for things to respond because it's pulling through this dirt, and that reverse action really helps to pull it in. But as a result of pulling it in like that, you do end up with a little bit slower response time, unless of course you overwhelm it with a bigger tractor. This is a 1025R, 25 horsepower engine, 24.1 formal rating, and then 18 horsepower on the PTO. So if you have a tractor of that similar size, it's a stage, just a class 1 3-point. So it's working really good. We're really happy with it. And we have a million projects to do, but namely the project at hand is getting grass growing, because there's nothing worse than trying to drive across and rutting up your yard all the time. Once you have grass, the grass helps so much to support loads like a tractor or a zero turn. And then you've got this nice long driveway like this, and you're just tracking mud all over it, and it just drives me nuts because I fly these airplanes off of here. So without further ado, guys, you know where to find it, right here on the channel that reviews RC and random other awesome things. Come back for more.